All right. Welcome to Your Voice, Your Vote, Your Voice, voter education and support presented by the TCC Connect campus. And so we're glad you guys could show up. And today we're going to be looking at registration and changes in the law and a little bit about the voting process itself. And I am Kimberly Cox. I'm an associate professor of government at Connect. And Joan Johnson, our assistant professor of government, will be our moderator for this particular talk. So the first thing I think students always need to look at is, are you registered to vote? And so to find out if you're already registered, some people may have registered a long time ago, they're not sure they're still registered. You can go to votetexas.gov. And I took a screenshot and highlighted, it says, am I registered? It's the very first question. And when you click on that, it takes you to this screen. And again, you can see, use the Am I Registered section to check voter registration, poll locations, early voting, etc. If you're not registered to vote, you can actually register. I like this if you need to change your name. Usually that's for a marriage. So when I got married, I took my husband's name. I needed to change that or change my address. I can do that online. And if you're eligible for a mail ballot, you can track it there as well. But to find if you're registered, over here where it's highlighted yellow, there's a selection criteria box that'll drop down, and you can put in information like your driver's license, your date of birth. They give you some different things you can put in, and then you click submit, and I'll show you later what comes up, but that's how you check if you're registered. If you're not registered, you could see on that page previous that you can register, not registered to vote, register there if you click on that. But I also wanted to let you guys know that if you move out of Texas, there is a place you can look that compiles all this information, which is really nice. It's the National Conference of State Legislators website. They have a whole section. I've just screenshotted part of it. But you see it in New Mexico where it's blue, it says New Mexico online voter registration. If you click that, that's a tab, a link that links you out to specifically New Mexico online voter registration information. And right now, 42 states do have online registration. Texas is not one of those. The other place you can look is, say you move to Oklahoma or California or Nevada or wherever, go to the Secretary of State for, say, Oklahoma, Secretary of State for California, Secretary of State for Nevada, and look for their election information because the Secretary of State is the official election person for each state. So how do you know if you're eligible to vote in Texas? This is the list off of the Vote Texas site. So you have to be a U.S. citizen, must be a resident of the county where you're submitting your registration application. So I'm a resident of Tarrant County. That's where I'll submit. I can't go take my registration to Dallas County or Harris County, for example. You can be 17 years and 10 months to register to vote, but you have to be 18 on election day to vote. And then we'll talk more about this, but you can't be a convicted felon and you cannot be declared mentally incapacitated by a probate court. Probate courts do usually guardianship and mental hearings. And so I put in there basically this will be encompassed in an official court order. So you'll have some sort of documentation if you fell into this category from a court. To register to vote in Texas, you need to fill out and return a signed voter registration application. Again, we do not have online registration. And I want to make that clear because the next bullet point says complete the application using the online voter registration application site, but you still have to print it out. So you have to print it, sign it, and you have to mail it to your county election office. And on votetexas.gov, under the Register to Vote tabs, the very first tab at the top, they have all that information. And you can click on it, find your county election office as well. So that's where you go to do that. You can only be registered in one county at a time. So I can't be registered again both here in Tarrant and Dallas. I can only be registered in one. So let's say, next week I up and move to another county. I need to update my registration. And again, Vote Texas has that information and how you can do that update. You can also request a printed application. Now, they say you can do this online. When I went to the site and I checked again this morning, it routes you back to the same form I'm about to show you, which is just the online application that you print. So there's another link that says to look at the county election offices, you're going to have to go through the county election office, it looks like. I could not find a way you could just request it specifically online. It's a little misleading, I think, in the wording, but that's my opinion. You also can visit your local voter registrar to complete the voter registration process. A lot of places, libraries, for example, will have the actual registration forms as well. So those are places you can do that. So this was the request a voter registration application link that the Vote Texas site took me to. If I click on this first one, it just takes me to the online place where I can register and print it. So here where it says county voter registrar, that's what you'd click. You'd have to contact them to request one to get a postage stamped one sent to you. Now I put this in here. I know that some of you, aren't technically living on a campus, but I thought it's interesting to know in case you have friends that do. If you update your registration address to a campus address, let's say you go to a four-year college away from home, you can vote in the campus's county where you are residing at that point. If you move away from campus, say back home, you will need to update your address back to your home address to that new address. Or if you go away to school, you can keep your parents' address, drive home and early vote or vote on election day, which I'll be honest, that's what I did when I was in college. College students are eligible to request an absentee ballot to vote by mail. Or, and this one's kind of different, you can vote in the county where you live as a student. And you can vote what's called a limited ballot. And what it allows you to do is vote in statewide races. So say you have your parents' address away and you're living at a different county for school, you can go vote limited ballot there, but it would only apply for the state races. You wouldn't be able to vote for the more local races on that ballot because that's technically not your county. One thing that I found interesting though is that if you do vote a limited ballot, it automatically registers you to vote in that county. So if you move back home again, you got to change it again. So I thought that was kind of an interesting twist to that. So we did the first tab, am I registered? And if you need to register to vote, I highlighted in yellow, register to vote as well. So that's what you would click. And when you do, this comes up and you have to choose, are you a US citizen or not? And then it'll say 18 years of age on or before the election day, and you fill out all the information. But I highlighted with the red arrow this box. I have not been issued a Texas driver's license, personal identification number, or social security number. You can check that box, and I may jump in and ask Joan this because I know, sorry to put you on the spot, Joan, but I know there have been some issues with matching up and rejecting ballots. So that makes me scared, that little box right now.
Yes. And it's best now to put, if you've got it, your last four, your social, and your driver's license number to prevent that from happening, Professor Cox.
Yeah, I know that and I have later, I pulled some stats on the number of rejections at the outset the first month, and it was, yeah, there's a lot, but anyway.
There are a lot. So, it would behoove you to put both, is what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Okay. So, and I would recommend that too. Make sure you put both numbers so when you send it in, they're not going to reject your ballot because of a mismatch on the numbers. Both will be provided, so it won't be a problem. Then down here below, I understand that giving false information, you basically are saying everything above is correct. There is a fine if not, so be careful. And you're attesting to the three statements, the three dots at the bottom. Then you're going to verify your data is correct before you submit, and there's a little submit button. And it says hitting the submit button will load your information into the proper form for you to print, sign, and mail. Do not mail this screen. So don't take a screenshot of this screen and mail it. You need to hit submit. It's going to convert it into the proper form. You got to print it, sign it, put a stamp on it, and mail it. So that's the key to that one. Now, I found this site. It's Register to Vote. I don't know if anybody else has used it yet, but they actually will, on their site, you can register to vote. You can fill out the required information, and you will be mailed by Register to Vote your filled out voter application, a stamped envelope that is addressed already properly. When you get it, you sign it and you date it and throw it in the envelope, put it in the mail, and it is done. Now, This is where I get the legal side out. Read their terms of agreement and privacy statements, because they're a third party that's doing this. They look fairly legit, but I don't want to totally endorse that without having always saying anything you sign or do online. Look at their terms of agreement and their privacy statement. But I thought this was an interesting website. The League of Women Voters uses them, I think, or recommended them on their site. So that was positive. What happens after I mail in my application? It takes about 30 days to get your registration certificate back. And what you need to do is you need to check it when you get it and make sure that all the information is correct. My students just did an assignment, and I had one student in the discussion board say that theirs wasn't. They didn't check it and they didn't realize it. And then when they went to vote, they had an issue. So it does happen. So if your information is not correct, make sure you return it to the voter register immediately to get fixed. Another thing I always say is when you get your voter registration card is look at the precinct number on the card, and I'll show you that in a second where you find that. That's the location where you vote, because I know a lot of students I have are like, I don't know where to go vote. I don't know my sorry, my dog's barking. Um, I don't know my polling location, and the numbers on your card will help with that. So this is a sample registration card, and I've circled in red the precinct number. And then over here on the bigger red circle are additional boxes that will be filled in with numbers like the independent school district number, state representative, Senate, et cetera, that you may need to find out who represents you, where you need to go vote. And again, the county voter registrar's office list for the Secretary of State, if you have any questions on, you know, your voter registration card and the information that you were sent, that's who you would contact. So what if I need to change something on my voter registration card? This comes up as well. It depends if you moved within your county or if you're moving to a different county. And I would suggest on this, you go to the votetexas.gov site to look at your information. It'll have places for name changes, updating your information, etc. So what date do you need to be registered by? Your application must be received by the voter registrar's office or postmarked at least 30 days before an election that you're eligible to vote in. So, and then there's a little caveat about the weekend. So over on the other side of the page, I have January 31st was the last day to register for the March 1st primary that's coming up. So don't worry if you aren't registered, go ahead and register, because you'll be able to vote in the elections coming up in May and also in November. So you just won't be able to vote in the March 1st elections if you missed that deadline. Do you need ID? Yes, to vote in Texas. And you can see the screenshot I took of all the IDs and the caveats to that. And all voters who register to vote in Texas must provide a Texas driver's license number or other number issued by the Texas Department of Safety, which I'll get to in a minute. Or there's that little box you can check that we talked about, that you have not been issued one of those. The problem I see with that box too is that, say you've moved from another state, you can go ahead and register, but say you haven't updated your driver's license yet, you will need one of these IDs when you go vote. You can go ahead and register with your new Texas address, but then you got to get these IDs, or down here again, these caveats need to be acquired if you're going to go vote. And so the Texas Department of Transportation does have an election identification card if you're not able to obtain one of these other forms of ID. And I did check the Tarrant County site, and they say, yes, it's still available. Yes, it's still valid. And on their site, they give you a DPS Texas.gov link to get to that. And on their site, I love that they had all these list of questions that come up. And so I just clicked on, is the DPS election identification certification still going to be available? And it went into, am I registered when I get this card? And no is the answer. Your card is your proof of identity. It is not your registration. So one thing to know is that you will still need to register if you get a EIC card as well. One other thing I wanted to mention about registration is there is the federal motor voter law. And so when you go get your license, or you update your license, you can do registration. There was a lawsuit on this recently. Um, oh, I think it was prior to the presidential election that the lawsuit finalized, because some people were able to renew their license and register because they weren't registered before. So they were able to register online. Now, Texas doesn't have online registration, but because of this loophole of the states having to comply with motor voter law, people were able to, when they renewed their driver's license, register online, and I thought that was kind of neat. And there's a lot of people who were able to register. So that was an interesting kind of tidbit. Really quick, I wanted to mention felony convictions and registering to vote. It varies state by state. So there's a neat site called Nonprofit Vote, which is a nonprofit kind of interest group that looks at felony voting rights state by state. And so I recommend going to their site. There is no uniform federal law on felony voting rights in the US. And Florida, I put the example down here, was requiring that felons pay their fines in full, even if they finish their probation, parole, everything. Um, and so that was a big deal. It went through the court in 2020, and the U.S. Supreme Court left in place a lower federal court decision that blocked a voter referendum. The referendum, had it gone in place, had it actually been allowed to take place, would have allowed qualified ex-felons who had completed probation, parole, or been pardoned to vote without paying their fines in full. They could still pay off their fines as they were able to vote. And the reason this was such a big deal is some of these fines can be extremely costly. So it may take a while, even if they've completed their probation, parole, etc., to pay off that fine, and that limits their voting. So again, Nonprofit Vote's a great site for this to look at. Mental incapacity. Texas Title II, Section 11 lists the details on mental incapacity. And I already kind of went over this before, but again, you will have a court order that says you fit this, if this applies, or if you know someone this applies to. It's a court issued incapacity. And again, just like felony voting rights, mental incapacity in voting varies state by state. So you're going to have to check each state's laws on this. And so I recommend checking with a lawyer and the Secretary of State for whichever state you move to if you have someone that this applies to and you had questions on. Disability. One thing is clear under the law: disability is not incapacitation. So it's different from the previous slide I just showed. And so voter states for voter rights must accommodate those with disabilities. And I would say check out Texas votetexas.gov's site. They have a specific page on voters with disabilities and how they, what accommodations that they offer, and it's pretty thorough. So if you're registered or do you register, what next? You're gonna have to look at the dates for the elections to make sure you know when to vote, find out what and who's on the ballot, and know your polling location. So I'm gonna give you a few places to look really quick. Ballotpedia is one of the places I use on a regular basis. So they do state by states in their search box on their main page. If you put in Texas elections 2022, this will come up. And in red F circle, what's on your ballot. If you click what's on your ballot, the next to the right, the sample ballot lookup is what appears. And whoops, let me get to this on where it says sample ballot lookup was the next page that came up. You can see the March 1st. I wanted to look at the May 7th because that's interesting. And then the November 8th. If you click on each of these, it gives you a list of what is included in those election dates. So for example, I pulled May 7th, and on May 7th, so far on Ballotpedia, they have the ballot measures, Texas increased homestead exemption, and the Texas property tax limit reduction are going to be on that ballot. And I clicked on Texas increased homestead exemption, and then down below, it gave me the detail. I apologize. Hopefully I can see my cursor, but there's a banner that came up across, but you can see that a yes vote supports increasing the homestead exemption for school district property taxes from 25,000 to 40. A no vote opposes this increase, and it goes through more detail if you scroll down. So Again, if I clicked on March 1st, to give me all the detail about that election. If I clicked on November 8th, it would as well. But I wanted to show you that if there's a ballot measure, this particular site spells this out for you, which is really, really helpful. Another all-in-one site you can check is TurboVote, which I use, and I'll show you an example of in a moment. And then the League of Women Voters is an awesome site, and they have Vote 411. You can register, verify your voter registration, find out what's on your ballot. It's extremely helpful. Now, TurboVote, this is an example. I signed up for them, and you can see it says, "Hi, Kimberly." And this is what I got. And I got this, goodness, I think on January 26th is what it was. So it says the Texas primary election is coming up March 1st. It gives you number one to check on your registration with links and the dates. This is what I like. Oh, and on the first, it says here, the place to mail my registration to if I haven't done that yet. Request your mail ballot. So if I were eligible for a mail ballot, it again gives me the links, the phone number, the address, and the dates of when I need to do this. But here, since I'm registered, make a plan to vote in person. Did you know you can vote early, February 14th through February 25th? Learn about where you can early vote, and there's a link for me. Or if I plan on voting on election day, great. We'll send info about your polling location the day before the election so I know where to go. Or they have a help desk where I can get more information. So they emailed me this, but they also, because I put my phone number in, they text me too. And I haven't gotten one, but I bet I get a text about the February 14th this weekend. Another place to look is on the Secretary of State's main page. I took a screenshot of what they have available, and you can see it's pretty thorough as well. They have all the dates, phone numbers, links, etc. So this is extremely helpful. And if I scroll down, it says what Texas voters need to know for the March 1st, 2020 primary election. Below that is all the information and links on that as well. On their main page, they also have this, which I highlighted, what's on the ballot. And if you click on that, I'm going to show you what it looks like. I did both the Republican and Democratic primary screenshots. And also look at the top, has all these dates, what's on the ballot, am I registered? So they're doing a great job of giving you links to everything. So 2022 election year, March 1st Republican primary. And again, I just took a screenshot of the top. But if I scroll down, it has all the people running the Republican primaries, governor's race, etc. And then I did the same thing. I just flipped it to Democratic primary, and it did the same thing. So if you don't know who's on the ballot, that's a great one as well. Again, 411 from the League of Women Voters, TurboVote will do it, the Vote Texas will do it, the Secretary of State's site. And these also are the important dates. So we have coming up February 14th. Oh, yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, please do.
What is the purpose of the primary elections? How are they different than the ones that we'll have in November?
That is a good question. I'm going to skip real quick because I'm going to try. I'll go back to that. I apologize. Thought I had it. Oh, I missed it. I'm going to try to get to this because I want to have it. Ah, there we go. So I threw this in here because I had a feeling most students are going to go, why are you talking about primary election? What the heck is that? So a primary election in a nutshell is telling your particular party which of the candidates running for a particular race do you think is the best fit. So out of, the governor's candidates, I believe there's 5 or 6 on the Republican side right now listed. Out of those 5 people running for governor on the Republican ticket, which of those 5 people would best represent the Republican Party? So it's narrowing down the candidates for the party for each particular seat that is up for election. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah. And we have open primaries in Texas too. So you're not tied to a party. So if I normally vote Republican but want to go vote in the Democratic primary, I can, or vice versa. Now, the only problem with that is, let's say I normally vote Republican and I want to go vote in the Democratic primary. I have to vote in the Democratic primary runoff. I can't go vote in the Republican runoff. Now, when the November general election comes around, I can switch back. It doesn't matter at that point, but um, you're kind of tied to whichever primary you participate in during that one little election season. So, um, but a primary is really about the parties choosing candidates or yeah, choosing which candidate is the best for that particular office for your party. Whereas the general election is choosing the office holder, who's going to actually hold the governor's position, who's going to actually hold the, you know, attorney general's position for Texas. So they definitely are different. And so, oops, go back. Sorry. But yeah, so the primary is what we're talking about, that first election where you're telling your party who's the best person for this particular seat. And so that's what's coming up. So your first day of early voting for the primary election is February 14th, again through the 25th. And the actual election day, if you don't vote early, which I highly recommend, March 1st is the actual election day. So, and we also have, I'm not going to talk too much about this because I know we'll have talks coming up on these, but we have local and county elections. So I just wanted to flash these on the screen. I know in later talks on this series, we'll be going over this, but May 7th is a date for the local county elections coming up. And then I think the runoffs were scheduled May 24th for those. And if you're looking for Tarrant County election information, this is what their website looks like, their election tab. And I've circled helpful links. Where do I vote? Sample ballots, election results after the election. So this is kind of the area I look, and you can see above it says military and overseas voting too. So if you're a Tarrant County voter and you need information on Tarrant County elections, this is a good site. And when you click on where do I vote, the page with the page with the map comes up. I took a screenshot and I highlighted find my registration, polling location, and sample ballot. I didn't put my information there because it showed mine, but that's what it looks like when you click on it. Texas Vote or votetexas.gov. Again, the selection criteria, one of the things you can find out about is your polling location. And when I click, put my selection criteria in, um, it'll have upcoming elections and it'll have Republican primary, Democratic primary. Again, you're going to choose one, not both, to participate in. But when I did it, they hadn't put the polling locations up yet. It was too early. But as we get closer, that'll be up there. 411, I mentioned again, you can get your ballot information. But another one that I haven't mentioned yet is the Texas Tribune has a Here's Your Texas 2022 March primary ballot page as well. And I looked at that this morning and it's updated. So the Texas Tribune also provides you with information. Again, type of election primaries, what we're doing now in March. We'll also have primary elections for, again, local and county elections, which again, in future talks, we're going to discuss. There's general election, which will be in November, which will choose the actual office holder for the positions. And we have some special elections also used mostly for constitutional amendments or filling vacant offices is typically what they're for. So those are the, I guess, the three main types of elections that we have in Texas. Local elections, I wanted to show you guys where you could find information on that as well. Again, I use Ballotpedia. And if you search for United States municipal elections, make sure you've got the right date. And then down below, I've highlighted everything. So by state, I looked up Texas. And over here, Texas pulled up on a separate page. And I looked at Fort Worth, Texas. We have city council. And then this came up. And it says the city of Fort Worth, Texas is holding general elections for city council on May 7th. A runoff election scheduled, and it tells you that. Now, it did not have the candidates up yet. You can see our candidates Ballotpedia staff will add candidate list for this election after it's published by local or state election office. It hadn't been when I pulled this a week ago. But when you do, if you click on candidates and results, you can come to municipal elections in Tarrant County 2022. And I'll show you what 2021's looked like. So you would have a little tab where you could get to it. Now this one shows the results as well, but you would only highlight District 7. That's my district. the two people would be shown, for example, in this particular office. And then if I say I don't know who Leonard Firestone or Zeb Pent are, what I did, and I just recommend, I just go to their did a Google search for their candidate page online to get information on him. For example, I just pulled one of them, Leonard, his issues, who's supporting endorsements. You can kind of get all the information on the candidate usually by doing a quick Google search. City elections, the city of Fort Worth, for example, has an election page as well. So the 2022 special elections, District 4 is having one. I believe that's a school board. I can't remember what that one is, but you could click on it and find out. And then campaign filings, you see there's Leonard Firestone again. I just let you see. And you can find your district. And they still had the 2021 voting location information as well when I clicked on this district information. I believe they'll update it as it gets closer to that May election date. Who represents me? I know one of the questions I get is sometimes about judges. There is a new site called Choose Your Judges. I didn't put it in this presentation. It wasn't updated. They did use it last year. I don't know if they will. If you want to check it out, it's called Choose Your Judges. But Ballotpedia, when you fill out their Who Represents Me, you'll get a page that looks like this with Congress, Texas State Senate District 12. Again, I put in my information, so it's showing who I would vote for. But if I continue to scroll down, it gives me everybody, including judges, running on the ballot as well. So that's another reason I like Ballotpedia. It gives me everything. So caveat, all this can change as laws change. So I would recommend reviewing information on a regular basis when you vote, and votetexas.gov is the official Texas voting site. So that's where, if you go anywhere, go there. The last part of this, really quick, is the court information, what's happening, because we've had a lot of court challenges lately. And so I picked the big ones. And Texas's new congressional and district state maps in the federal courts are being challenged by MALDEF, saying that the maps discriminate against Latino voters. And so they claim that the districts were drawn unconstitutionally and violate the Federal Voting Rights Act. And also the districts they say, are discriminatory to Latinos under the Districts for the State Board of Education as well. So that's one of the lawsuits that's out there that's still pending. Another challenge that we have is the Mexican American Legislative Caucus is suing the state court. And they say this one's a little bit different. They're saying the Texas Constitution requires legislators to keep intact counties with sufficient populations to make up one House district. And it's part of Article 3, Section 26, if you want to look at it. And this one, really interesting because it's a state constitutional challenge. They were looking at Cameron County down there, the Rio Grande Valley, and the county line was broken. Basically, that cracking that they sometimes do, the pack and crack, broken twice to create 3 districts, and only one of those districts is wholly within the county. So it's a really weird thing that they did down there, but that's kind of what's going on. They're challenging that particular type of practice and using the Cameron County. If you read through, I pulled the actual filing, and they talk about Cameron County as the example of why this is not okay to do. Now this one I have an update on. This is Fort Worth's district challenge, District 10, that was filed in federal court. It's currently held by Beverly Powell. She's a part of the lawsuit. And this particular lawsuit also is claiming dilution of minority voting strength. They took District 10 and split it out. It was a majority minority district. And the way that they split it, they took Black and Hispanic voters and split them and combined them with rural areas that were more predominantly white. So, and that's very much a generalization. So, one of the things that will be interesting with this particular case is they're looking at gerrymandering. And when you talk about racial gerrymandering under the law, it doesn't need to be intentional. If you didn't mean to discriminate, but you did, you're still violating the law under racial gerrymandering, as long as the Supreme Court follows past case precedent. Now, as of February, the very 1st of February in 2022, federal judges did look at this case. It's still in the system, so it hasn't been decided yet, but they were looking for an injunction. Beverly Powell and her side were looking for an injunction to stop the new map being used and go back to the old map for the primary that's coming up in March 1st. And it at the time that I looked at it, the judges were still putting out the opinion piece on it, but it looks like, from what I could find, that they were deferring to the Supreme Court's warning in a previous case that lower courts should, quote, not make changes on the eve of an election. So I think that's why they didn't do anything. So the new maps will be used in the March 1st primary, from what I can tell. So that was an update on that one. And there's more. The U.S. Department of Justice is suing in federal court as well, the state of Texas. And I pulled theirs, but basically the main claim is that the legislature, when they drew the maps, the new maps that we're using, discriminates against voters of color and giving more power to white voters in elections. And I pulled the statistics on this. So there were 4 million new residents in Texas since the last census. 95% of that growth were people of color, half were Hispanic. And so what they did in looking at the maps, the number of House districts um, representing majority Hispanic voters went from 33 to 30, and the number of congressional map districts for Hispanic majority districts went from 8 to 7. For example, um, the examples that they use in this particular case were the 34th and 15th districts down in South Texas. So if you read through the case in full, they do mention specific examples where this is a big problem. So that's that election challenge. And this is the census information I just gave you. Really, Merrick Garland, our U.S. Attorney General, obviously is heading up this. It is based off of the 10-year census numbers and the differences I just gave. And one other allegation said that Texas intentionally eliminated a Latino electoral opportunity in Congressional District 23, a West Texas district where courts had identified Voting Rights Act violations during the previous 2 redistricting cycles, et cetera. So it's not something that's new. It happens frequently, but I won't go too much into it, but we don't have pre-clearance anymore, which is where the Department of Justice has to check our maps. So everything has to be challenged in the courts now versus going through a check first. Why do we care? Litigation like this can cause problems and confusions for voters. Now, so far, the federal courts are not have not given any of the injunctions on these cases, so the new maps will go into place. But let's say they said, okay, well, you can't use these new maps. What would happen? It could delay the primary elections while they're revising the maps to comply with federal law. And this has happened. The last time it happened was in 2012. And I looked up the date. We didn't, in 2012, we had our primary April 3rd instead of March 6th, which was the date it was supposed to happen in 2012. And just as a trivia, Greg Abbott, who is our current governor, was the Texas Attorney General defending that case at the time. Anything else? Of course, yes. Delayed primaries, if they did happen, could reopen filing to new people. That was one of the things that happened in the past. And then challenges keep coming up on the news. Senate Bill 1 rules on voting. The big one for this, there's a second lawsuit by the U.S. Department of Justice, and it focuses on mail-in ballots and voter assistance, mainly for disabled voters. So not only discrimination issues for voters of color, but discrimination issues for disabled voters and elderly voters in particular. And this is what the lawsuit looks like. So it says, SB1 challenges provisions of SB1 that deny eligible voters meaningful assistance in the voting booth and require rejection of mail ballot materials for immaterial errors or omissions, violating Section 2A of the Voting Rights Act. So other problems we're seeing is what Professor Johnson, I asked the question about, told you about, is the rejection of voter registration cards, where if you don't have both your social and your driver's license in, that's causing some problems. The matching that needs to be done, there's a mismatch when the state verifies the voters and the new law requirements. And then Harris County, as of late January, rejected about 16% of their applications, and Travis County was rejecting about half. So that's a lot. Um, the Secretary of State's office is telling them to get with it and fix that problem, but I think it's a cycle because the problems are because of the new law. So I'm not sure how they're going to fix that, but anyway. And then this was fun. I love this one, paper shortages. Texas is one of only 8 states, remember, 42 do online registration, so they're not going to have this problem. But we rely very heavily on paper registration, and with supply chain issues, this is a problem. So the statement from the Secretary of State went out and it said they were limited in what we can supply this year because of the paper shortage and the cost constraints due to the price of paper and the supply of paper. So cost to paper has gone up. Being able to get it is a problem. And they did indicate that they would accept voter registrations submitted on the old forms, but I've been in here. I wondered because of the mismatch problem we had on the previous slide, and them throwing out registrations or flagging them. That I don't know that sending in a old voter registration form would be the best option. But anyway, um, they will not accept old forms for absentee mail ballots due because of the SB1 requirements. So, and I checked on this one. The League of Women Voters threatened to sue the state if they couldn't get requested voter registration packets. It looks like they have been able to get some of those. So there has been no lawsuit filed that I could find, but there was threats on this one. So one more time, I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew, even though registration's passed for the primary vote on March 1st, you still can meet the registration for the May and the November elections. So I still encourage you to register to vote. But if you are currently registered, you can vote early between February 14th, which is this Monday, through February 25th, and then the actual election day is March 1st if you do not early vote. We also, too, February 14th, I want to put a plug in. We're going to have an open lab for voters. So this is a come and go. If you have questions about voting, I'm going to be running that. I won't tell you who to vote for, but if you, things like, I don't know how to find my polling location, am I registered to vote, what's on the ballot, those kind of technical questions, that's where you can come ask me those questions. And then we'll have talks on what's on the ballot and voting issues coming up as well in the series that we are presenting. And so the attendance link will be in the chat. And does anyone have any questions other than get registered to vote, everybody?
I got a quick question, Professor Cox.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you strongly suggest that people vote in early voting. Could you tell me the benefits of early voting rather to waiting till election day?
The lines. That's my reason. It's easier. When I early vote, I usually time myself. Last time I early voted to park, walk in, vote, and get out took me about 15 minutes. And so it is extremely easy compared to election day. Now, especially during state election periods like now, if it's a presidential election year, I know the last presidential election season, my early voting location was pretty busy. But when I voted in the local elections, early voting, I walked in, walked out really quick. I mean, what do you guys think as far as advantages for early voting?
Well, isn't it also true that you can vote in any polling place in Tarrant County and you don't have to go?
Yes.
So one of the benefits is we've got early voting on our campuses, right?
I haven't seen the information, but usually we do.
We've
So,
got it everywhere. We've got Northeast, Northwest, South, and Southeast campus are early
okay.
voting.
Yeah, I
Which
had
is,
not seen that. So good. I know you know. So, but yeah, you can vote at any early voting location within your county. So it makes it a lot easier. Whereas on election day, you have to find your specific voting location. So if you wait till March 1st, you have to go to one specific place to vote. If you vote early, there are multiple places to vote. And so that's why, again, February 14th at Open Lab, if you're not sure, I can get online with you and walk you through finding all the polling locations within your area that are closest to you. So that's a plug for that as well.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Any other questions or?
Well, while we're plugging things, I just wanted to jump in for a minute. Because I'll be doing the February 25th What's on My Ballot. And so if any of y'all, as you're looking through the What's on My Ballot and you're curious about like what does the county judge do or any of the other positions, that's what that presentation is going to cover. So it would be fantastic if anybody interested in that looks over their ballots first so they can come prepared with questions and be a bit familiar with those, at least the titles. And then the April 29th will focus on local elections. So again, hopefully that gets y'all more interested in what's coming up.
So I'm glad you said that. That's perfect. So now y'all can, if you aren't registered, you can get registered. You can check the ballot if you're going to be voting in the primary or in the local elections coming up in May. But get those sample ballots. I'll be honest, what I do, and I don't know what the other instructors do, but I print out that sample ballot and do my research. And when I walk in, I know who I'm going to vote for. So that helps me. It makes it a lot easier. And that's another reason I like early voting is I feel like I have some time to get that sample ballot, research who I want to vote for, go vote, and it's just a less stressful process in all. Any other questions or?
I don't see any, Professor Cox.
Okay. I guess we'll put the attendance link in the chat. And again, February 14th, we'll have a come and go. If you have questions on, I know I covered all this stuff really fast. If you have questions, you can email me to or stop in on the 14th and ask anything you want. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out. Professor Johnson's a really good person to contact you. I'm gonna put a plug in for you. But usually just the information we can get, if we don't know, we'll find it, I would think. And we want to help students so that they can register and vote and get active in civics.
Hello, Kimberly.
Hi.
Yeah, I wanted to put a plug in for an outside group. I'm with this bar association, and we're having a webinar Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the 16th at 6 o'clock. And we're going to have a lot of the administrators, election administrators, and a couple of precinct uh, election judges to talk about the law and how it's changed and some of the pitfalls. So I can send you a flyer, and if you available, join us, the Clifford Davis Legal Association, Wednesday the 16th at 6 o'clock.
Is it in person or online?
Online, it's gonna
Oh, it's
be
online. Okay. So for our online, it's great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'll send that to you, and perhaps you can join, and anyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I mean, students too, if you know of events and you want to send them, we're trying to get everybody to get active, get involved, learn how these processes work. And again, things like, just mentioned, help us all, gives us more
Right.
information. So
Right. Do you know if we can in Texas, if we can give drinks or anything to voters standing in line?
I think that was one of the SB1. To be honest, that's one piece I didn't check. But I know that was part of the original SB1. I'll have to look and see. I don't know if we can or not on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize.
No, no problem.
I know in some states that is one of the things, and I know the original SB1 had that in there.
Right.
So I would need to check to see if that piece, I know because it was going to be challenged by the Department of Justice. There was questions about taking it out because it seemed like it would probably fail. any legal challenge, but whether they did or not, I need to check.
Right, and also the poll workers and how they can poll watchers and how they can watch you more
That one is
closely now.
yeah, that one is in there, I believe. I'm almost positive that's part of it. The poll
Right,
watchers have more access, freedom of access to walk around. And that is part of the challenge too, that it might be voter intimidation, and violates the privacy of your vote, but
right.
that's yeah, I
And, and the
mhm,
election officer can be arrested and charged with the crime.
yeah. The other strange one was that election officials can't help voters like they used to be able to. Outside independent parties can, candidates can, but election officials can't with registration and voting, which is really, again, you kind of want your election officials to be able to do that, I would think, but SB1 says no. So,
Right, so it's criminalizing elections now.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of really interesting things that I think when the cases get all the way up to the top of the federal court system, I'll be interested to see how many pieces of those get knocked down. So, I know some of it will stand. They'll say it's states' rights and states can do certain pieces of it, but others I have questions about. So, yeah.
Right. Well, enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else or?
No, ma'am, don't see any other questions.
Okay. Oh, great. You put the, oh, all right. If you do have questions, please contact us. Let us know. And we'll answer them as best we can and help you guys out.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And don't forget to fill out the attendance form. It's in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.